Hello, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to all of you joining us from different corners of the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. I'm so happy and delighted to welcome you all to today's Youth Foresight webinar, Pathways to Prosperity, Solutions for Youth Skills and Livelihoods. A very important topic, which is co-hosted by UNICEF Generation Unlimited. I am Neha Jain, and I will be your moderator for today's session. A little bit about myself. I'm a part of the Global Young People's Action Team at GenU, and I wear a few different hats. I engage as the accelerator at National Youth Climate Consortium in India, where we are empowering grassroots climate leaders across the country. I'm also the youth content creator with UNICEF India for more than 4 years now, and I also lead my own initiatives called Minds of Meraki Foundation to empower women artisans making indigenous nature-based handicrafts as thriving entrepreneurs and Project Climate Ready to nurture resilient young climate leaders from the marginalized communities through a holistic, experiential, and localized climate education curriculum. So, in that spirit of collaboration, curiosity, and leadership, I'm here to I'm here today to steer this important conversation on youth skills and livelihoods, a theme which is personally very close to me. As a young woman who grew up navigating through rigid systems with biases around age, gender, career choices, I have witnessed firsthand how so many brilliant young people are brimming with ideas, resilience, and hope. But we are often held back by self doubt induced by these structural and systematic barriers. So, on the other side of it, I've also seen how transformational it can be when we do invest in young people, when systems listen to us, and when mentorship is accessible, when education connects to opportunity. So here I am as one of those young people who've gotten this opportunity. And today's conversation, it's not just about ideas on paper or just about talking. It's also about real lives. It's about real dreams, aspirations, and futures of some of you, me, and millions of young people all across the world. We are gathered here just a few days after World Youth Skills Day. And to mark that, Generation Unlimited is launching its powerful new executive report, Pathways to Prosperity, Solutions for Youth Skills and Livelihoods, as you all would know. This report brings together insights from across sectors, public, private, and youth partners to address one of the most urgent challenges of our time. How do we ensure that young people can access opportunities they deserve? We are living in an era where the largest generation of youth in history is coming of age, yet so many of them are unemployed, underemployed, or locked out of systems that should be enabling them to thrive. So, whether it's aligning education with the future of work, closing gender gaps, ensuring digital inclusion, or supporting youth led entrepreneurship, I think this report presents a bold vision and actionable pathways to unlock the potential of young people like us as change makers, job creators, catalysts for more just and sustainable future. So that's where this report and today's conversation comes in. Today, we'll together hear some of the key findings and insights from the report to begin with. Then we'll go on to explore some of the on-ground examples, practices, and perspectives from different panelists that we have today from public, private, and youth sectors. And then we'll dive into the call to action that reminds us that it's a shared responsibility. And finally, importantly, center youth voices and leadership, which is going to shape the path forward. So first, it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker, our first speaker, Tom, who would walk us through the highlights and insights from the report. Tom is Senior Advisor on Global Programs at UNICEF Generation Unlimited and the lead author of the report. He has been instrumental in shaping this report and has deep experience building cross-sector youth livelihood solutions globally. We are so grateful to have you here. Tom, the floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Neha. It's really lovely to be here, and I'm really appreciative of that lovely introduction that you've given me. Um, it's a real pleasure to be here speaking today. I just want to confirm, Neha, that you can see the slideshow. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. That's great. We're off to a good start. So it's really a pleasure to be with you and all of the other panelists here today to be talking about this really important topic. First, though, a big thank you to the audience. It's great to see so many of you online. And in today's world where there's so many different things to read and webinars to engage with, we're truly honoured that you would choose to spend your time with us today. So thank you. As Nia said, I'll be providing you with a whistle-stop tour of Generation Unlimited's latest executive report, Pathways to Prosperity, Solution for Youth Skills and Livelihoods. I've got the really tough job of trying to communicate the key points of an 80-page report in 7 minutes, so wish me luck. Before I begin, though, I want to acknowledge the report's co-authors, Julia Stevens, Kathleen Fincham, Yvette Adoyo, Huai Buitu, and Jeet Tripathi. Thanks to all of you for your hard work and for perseverance in creating this really robust, insightful, and most importantly, easy to read analysis of the most up-to-date trends and insights in the learning to earning space. Now, I've done enough thanking people, so let's dive into the report. Now, today's generation is the largest in history of young people. There are over 1.2 billion youth aged 15 to 24, and that's expected to rise to nearly 1.3 billion by 2030. But nearly 1 in 5 youth globally, 261 million, are not in employment, education, or training. They're NEET. Alarmingly, out of those 246 million, or nearly 95%, are in LMICs, lower and middle income countries, and two-thirds are young women. These young people are not just missing jobs, they're missing out on skills, income, inclusion, and agency. We know that economic inactivity has long-term scarring effects on individuals and communities, reducing productivity, civic engagement, and social stability. Now, despite uncertainty due to changes in technology and economic instability, the global community really needs to act with urgency to transform the fragmented youth skilling efforts into coherent, inclusive pathways to youth livelihoods. To act cohesively, we need to be aligned on challenges, opportunities, and potential solutions. And this report was designed to give us a common framework to think, speak, and act about how to best support youth to transition from learning to earning. Now, normally I wouldn't spend time talking about a report creation methodology, but this isn't your typical report. It's not a desktop review. It's not an RCT or randomized control trial. It's not a qualitative analysis. It's the best of all of these things. In developing the report, we took a quasi-rigorous approach in which we combined insights from robust academic literature with contributions from world-leading practitioners and funders. The report generates insights from public, private, and youth actors, including members of the GenU Global Leadership Council and the Young People's Action Team. We went through 5 main stages to collect, synthesize, and analyze data, and that's what you're seeing in front of you. We started in September 2024 with a session with our Global Leadership Council where we initially got some ideas and insights into what they're doing in this space. We then developed an insight survey for this same group of people. We held consultation with 21 members of our young persons advocacy team from 5 regions. We did a review of academic and grey literature, and then once we pulled it all together into a report, we sent it out for review by that Global Leadership Council and the YPATs along the way and got their feedback, case studies, and inputs for quotes. This was all underpinned by ongoing advice and guidance from an internationally renowned group of members within our steering committee. And this helped us to build a report that's grounded in evidence, aligned with cutting-edge practices, and which reflects the lived experience of youth. Now, I want to move into the real substance of the report. So we're going to start with the 4 core challenges that we identified through our analysis. The first is that skilling is outpacing employment. Globally, 1.2 billion youth will enter working age in the next decade, but only 420 million jobs are expected to be created. For example, in Africa, the youth population will double by 2050, but only 12 million jobs are added each year. Second, youth are not acquiring job-relevant skills. Formal education often fails to equip young people with the technical, digital, and transferable skills needed in evolving markets. Third, linear pathways that see young people traverse from education straight into employment are no longer the lived reality. Most young people have to navigate a non-linear transition moving from informal work, education, caregiving into more formal employment. Yet a lot of the existing programs assume a straight path from school to employment. Fourth, informality dominates youth employment. Only 78% of employed youth in LMICs work in the over 78% of employed youth in low and middle income countries work in the informal sector. They have limited protections, training, or prospects for progression. Now, while there's a number of challenges, we've also managed to highlight even more, 6 key opportunities that can potentially be harnessed to support young people. Number one, more and better market responsive skilling. We need to align training with employer needs, and this can significantly improve youth employability. While it sounds obvious, it's critical. Often education systems are big and a bit slow moving. They're not able to keep up with the demands of the labour market. Market responsive skilling can be a great complement for more formal education to ensure youth have the skills they need. Number two, work-based learning. Internships, apprenticeships, and on-the-job learning can accelerate transition and close that experience gap because often young people miss out on that experience to be able to demonstrate to employers their employability. These provide critical pathways for youth to transition smoothly to employment. Growth industries is number 3. Sectors like digital, the green economy, care, and creative industries offer huge potential for job creations. And we think a greater focus can be put on programming and support for skilling in these niches to drive future industries and economic growth and jobs for young people. Fourth, digital platforms can play a huge role in bridging the gap between skilled youth and job markets, offering scalable, cost-effective job matching and career transition tools. 5, youth entrepreneurship. Young people are already creating their own jobs with better access to finance, mentorship, and policy support through an end-to-end support system for young entrepreneurs. Young people can create jobs for other people too. And then lastly, number 6, private sector partnerships. Employers have a huge role to play in designing solutions, driving critical demand-side reform, and supporting inclusive hiring. There's a more and bigger role that they can play to drive national, local, and global employment practices. So lastly, my last slide, I want to talk about how we can turn these opportunities into action. We've identified 6 bold calls to action you can see on the screen in front of you. Number 1, aligning public, private, and youth programming. We need to break down the silos between different public, private, and youth actors and leverage our complementary strengths to deploy integrated end-to-end employment solutions. Co-creation with young people, number 2. Youth have to be engaged, not just as beneficiaries, but as decision makers, designers, and evaluators. Number 3, we need to think of the local realities. One-size-fits-all approaches don't work, and solutions must reflect the diverse and dynamic context youth face. Number 4, and I mentioned this before, further investment in youth-led entrepreneurship. We need to shift from fragmented pilots to ecosystem-level support for young entrepreneurs, especially in high-growth and underserved sectors. Number 5, we need to catalyze alternative capital and financing approaches. We need to unlock public, private, and blended finance to support scale and sustainability. And in particular, the private sector, as the ultimate beneficiary of advanced human capital, should contribute more financing to support human development. And 6th and last, we need to strengthen the evidence base. We can't scale what we don't yet understand. We need more investment in research, and that is essential to guide effective interventions. Phew. All right, that was a lot in a short amount of time. I hope it was cohesive. For those who want to spend more time digging into the detail, Gladys or Julia will put a link into the chat to the report and you can have a look in your own time. As I close up, I want to highlight the thoughts of Christina Williams, a youth member of the GenU Global Leadership Council that's quoted in the report. She emphasised that young people don't just want jobs, they want sustainable careers that offer dignity, pride, and a path out of poverty. This report gives us a blueprint. Now the responsibility lies with all of us, governments, businesses, youth, development partners, to act. Looking forward to the rest of the discussion. Back to you, Neha. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. Again, emphasizing on the fact that if any of you have questions or reflections, please feel free to put down on the chat and we'll be happy to take them later. So now, without any further ado, I would like to straight move into our panel discussion where we are joined by 4 amazing panelists who bring both expertise and lived experiences to share their insights and all the amazing work that they've been doing. So first, let me introduce Ernest, a fellow member of the GenU Young People's Action Team and part of its steering committee. Ernest brings the voice of youth advocacy, entrepreneurship, conservation agriculture, and lived experiences from Rwanda. Hello. Would you like to say hi to everybody?
Yes, thank you so much, Neha, for the wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. It's Bob, an honor and privilege to be here in this fantastic webinar. Look forward to an amazing discussion. Thank you.
Next, we have Rihanna, pillar lead for meaningful work at the World YMCA. She is leading youth empowerment efforts across a global network with a strong focus on skill development, youth livelihoods, dignity, and inclusion in the workplace. Welcome, Rihanna.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for having me, and wonderful to be here with everyone today.
Now we have Urmila Sarkar. She's Deputy Director, Programs Generation Unlimited, with decades of experience at the intersection of education, skills, youth development, and a systems lens we'll all benefit from. Welcome, Urmila.
Thanks so much. Really excited to be with all of you here today on a topic I'm very passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Farai. She is from Africa Livelihoods and Education Lead at Accenture Development Partnerships. She brings in the perspective of private sector partnerships and innovation across the African continent with her emphasis on multi-stakeholder partnerships for employment, digital and future skilling, gender equity and education. Welcome.
Hi, Neha, and thank you all so much. I must say what I really love about this webinar is how many young people are here with us. And I think young people, we have to be at the forefront of shaping solutions for our future. So I think this is really reflective of that and really excited to engage.
Super. Thank you so much. And we'll keep this next segment dynamic, reflective, and action focused. Again, to everybody in the audience, be with us. We invite you to be a part of this dialogue. Share your questions in the chat, reflect along the way, and stay with us till the end as we open the floor for question and answer segment. So yes, with that, let's get started with our conversation. And I would like to begin with a question to Ernest. So as a part of the report process, you facilitated a youth consultation. So can you share a little bit of insight and some experience with the key challenges that your peers highlighted when discussing the transition from learning to earning?
Yes, thank you so much, Neha, for that good question. First of all, to begin with, I want to say that this conversation and indeed this whole initiative is one of a kind. This is not just a normal discussion. It is a discussion that is talking about, youth employment, one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. It's youth unemployment. And of course, as we were having different consultations with young people, there are so many challenges that young people could bring up that they say they were facing. Of course, young people come in different parts of the world. The challenges facing young people in Africa are kind of not the same as the challenges facing young people in Europe or in Asia. But one thing in common is that they do have some of the key challenges that they have in common, which shows that it is a big problem for them across the globe, regardless where they are located. I have tried to meditate some of the key challenges that young people have had in common, regardless where they are. What the primary, the first challenge that they were saying is lack of prior experience. When it comes to employment, especially the employers, be it the government institutions, be it the private sectors, they're looking to develop their companies or their organizations, and they're looking for the people who are having enough experience. And when you look at the young people who are just graduating from university, they'd be like, no, I've only come from university a few months ago. I do not have experience. Or maybe they graduated and they spent like 3 years without any employment, and still they do not have experience. So lack of prior experience was like the most pressing challenge facing young people, restricting them from earning any employment. And the other challenge was the the job market saturation. Like there are so many young people out there who are seeking for jobs. It's as if we have 5 jobs and there are more than 1,000 young people looking for those specific jobs. So saturation of job market was the other challenge that you could see that it's sounding or it's becoming more frequent from the perspectives of young people. The other challenge that they have mentioned was the lack of career guidance. You know, when someone has graduated from university, especially young people, they have so much expectations. So they'd be like, you know, I went to the brilliant university. I think maybe if I graduate, I'm going to get a job. But at the end of the day, when they get outside, they could find the reality outside is very different from what they're expecting from when they were still in university. So, which means they do not have people who provide the right mentorship, right guidance to take them through the struggle of finding jobs, for them to understand that even though you have graduated with a degree, it doesn't mean that when you get outside, you are going to immediately get a job. So, this gap in transition from school to the workplace, lack of mentorship, lack of guidance and support, or even ways to navigate the job market is the other big challenge facing young people from across the globe. And the last challenge that I can point out that many young people are having in common is bias in hiring. You know, gender bias especially. Young people from different parts of the world are very enthusiastic at working, but when it comes to gender, especially ladies or girls, I think those two words are the same. Girls especially were mentioning that they face this bias on their gender, saying that there's some jobs that they cannot do. Why? Because of maybe some physical energy that is required for these jobs to be done, or any other bias or cultural norms that could stop some of the girls from obtaining jobs. So, among many other challenges, those are one of the main challenges facing young people from different parts of the world. So, this not to mean that these are the only challenges, but of course, these are the key challenges that stood out the most and that were common to a lot of young people from different parts of the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ernest. We hear you, and thank you for highlighting the key challenges, especially inequity and the gender biases in the systemic uh, frame of barriers that we are living in. And as you mentioned, while we are talking about challenges, it's also important to talk about mentorship, guidance to navigate through the market and the opportunities. And for that, I would like to ask Farai, this report presents different key opportunities, which Tom also mentioned briefly. And it's clear that the involvement of the private sector is critical. So it will be great to hear your perspective on why it is so important and how it can be strengthened, how young people can get more opportunities and the gap can be bridged.
Thanks, Neha. And I think that, as Ernest has highlighted, there are so many issues that young people face when it comes to transitioning from learning to earning. And these major issues young people face make it so clear that youth unemployment is not just a government problem. It's not just an NGO problem. It's a systemic issue that affects economic growth, it affects market stability, and it affects really the future workforce as we see it. And that's why it's so important that the private sector is involved in shaping and contributing to solutions for youth unemployment. And I think what's interesting about the private sector is that we hold the demand side of the equation. We often are aware of what skills we need, what roles are available, what are the future skills, how is the world of work changing. And therefore, demand-led skilling has to be driven by industry needs as being major job creators. When we have a lack of private sector involvement, this is a really big missed opportunity to actually co-create sustainable and long-term solutions that can empower young people, be it through entrepreneurship or employment. I think often when we think of private sector involvement, we limit that involvement to only funding or corporate social responsibility, but the private sector must play a larger role. And this is seen through actually creating solutions, through bringing strategy, through leveraging more private sector to get involved, through sharing what the future of work looks like. And at Accenture, what's been really interesting with the work that we've done is that we've seen what partnerships between the private sector, between governments, between young people, and between NGOs can bring. We see it with the work that we do with Generation Unlimited, where we're supporting and how we can build cross-sector partnerships for youth skilling and livelihoods. We've seen it in the work we do with Save the Children and Junior Achievement. I recently did work with Save the Children South Africa, where we looked at how do we actually map job linkages for young people in the South African context? Where are the jobs? What are the skills young people need? One of the examples Ernest mentioned that young people face is this experience trap where you can't get a job without work experience, but you can't get work experience without a job. So how do we as private sector make sure that issues that we can easily address, we're getting rid of them and removing the barriers to entry for young people? And how do we actively support in creating sustainable solutions? So really key, and very glad to be a private sector voice here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And as you said, the role of private sector in supporting youth, it's way beyond CSR. It's way beyond that and need to focus on solutions. And it's really great to see how you're already partnering with different organizations in Africa. And to further build on this, I would like to ask you, Rehana, since the report also kind of emphasizes on importance of investing in support pathways to different industries and jobs that are growing and emerging. So can you kind of build on it, and how does that look like in practice in terms of action for the YMCA?
Thank you, Neha. The report identifies investing in pathways towards growing industries as an important opportunity, as you've just said, and it's one that we're actively embracing at the YMCA. Around the world, we're seeing the rapid rise of the green and digital economies, but also a broader rainbow of emerging sectors that Tom referred to earlier, including the blue economy, which focuses on the sustainable use of ocean resources, the purple care economy, the orange economy centered on creativity and culture. But importantly, the picture isn't the same everywhere. These industries are evolving at different speeds across different regions. And so that's why, as a YMCA movement working across 120 countries, it's so important for us to understand the local economic landscape. And we do this by listening to young people, analyzing labor market trends, and partnering with other actors across the work ecosystem, as other panelists have highlighted. So with employers to co-design training, offer apprenticeships, with civil society to mobilize communities and provide guidance and mentorship, with technical and financial partners to bring in innovation and investment, and with governments to create enabling policies and help us to scale impact. And it's not just about knowing where the jobs are, it's also about where young people want to be, and then bridging that gap, especially where we see that mismatch between the skills young people leave education with and the skills employers are actually looking for. So we support young people in gaining future-ready skills and then accessing opportunities in these emerging economies through both employment and entrepreneurship. And we're especially focused on supporting those who are underserved or face barriers to participation in the labour market, some of the points that Ernest spoke to earlier. So one example is our new global pilot program, Igniting Youth Futures, being rolled out in South Africa, Farai, you'll be glad to hear, in Spain and in India, supported by Accenture and the Macquarie Group Foundation. The program focuses on transforming learning to earning pathways in the green economy, using digital solutions and testing innovative financing mechanisms, something that we'll come back to later, to make these pathways more accessible and sustainable. And on a smaller scale, we also see impactful local initiatives like YMCA Hong Kong's social enterprise that upcycles fresh flowers into dried flower products, reducing waste while helping young mothers build their skills, their confidence, and earn an income as they re-enter the workforce. We will share links to this project and other project examples in the chat. Thank you, Julia. Lastly, we also care so deeply about the quality of work that young people enter into. Building on the ILO's Decent Work Framework, World YMCA, together with our partner Deloitte, developed meaningful work standards created with young people for young people. Young people told us clearly, work should be so much more than just about a paycheck or just about profit. It should contribute to purpose, to well-being, to sustainability, the points that Tom made in his concluding remarks earlier. And it should be both for individuals and their communities in which they live. So we've been starting to apply these meaningful work standards within YMCA workplaces, assessing ourselves against these standards and developing action plans to improve policies and practices so that young staff and volunteers can be in working environments where they can truly thrive. We're also exploring how to extend these standards to other organizations and the private sector and other entities that are interested in embedding more meaningful work experiences in their own contexts. Because for us, it's not just about helping young people access opportunities in these growing industries, but it's also about ensuring that the work that they find there aligns with what they define as meaningful.
Yeah. Thank you for these very important insights, Rihanna. And especially what struck me was how we need to prioritize purpose and peace and planet over profit. And that totally also shifts the perspective we hold towards prosperity. So what does then prosperity mean? How can we envision different meanings associated with prosperity? So it's really a food for thought of what really prosperity means. Is it purpose, profit, or more than that, or a combination of both? So thank you for that. And another important point is that today young people are not just job seekers, they are also job creators. And the report also talks about support for young entrepreneurs, which is a critical livelihood pathway. So I would like to come to you, Uma, and ask you more about this, because as a young social entrepreneur myself, I think I'm also very curious to know about what your perspective is on supporting more young entrepreneurs. In what ways can we do that and make sure that we are able to access that support? Because sometimes there's this gap where young people are doing work and there are opportunities out there, but the connection of both is kind of challenging sometimes. So would love to hear more of your perspective on this.
Thanks so much, Neha, for the great question, also for the great moderation. And just before I answer the question, again, just from my side to congratulate Tom and all the co-authors for the report and all those contributed, as well as, it's been great to sit on the steering committee, and also just to thank the World Bank, the YMCA, we have on the panel, ILO, EDC, and so many others that have contributed in helping shape the report. And as Ernest said, I agree with him, that this is one of the biggest development challenges of our time. So I'm hoping that this report is unearthing really important solutions to overcoming these challenges. And one of them is embedded in the question you just asked, Neha, because when we look at the global labor markets, especially in the low and middle income context, where young people need the most support, it's clear that formal jobs alone and formal labor markets alone cannot really absorb the millions of young people entering the workforce each year. We've already seen that, and that's borne out in the data. So then supporting youth entrepreneurship and youth-led innovation, it's not just a stopgap. It's really a deliberate strategy to unlock economic innovation, community resilience, and actually it's a job creator. And so young entrepreneurs are often the first to identify the solutions in the emerging sectors, as we heard already from our young people on the panel today. And they will, whether it's in the green economy, the digital economy, or identifying new opportunities in the creative industries or the care sector, we need to look to our young people for those new ideas. Our young people are going to be living closest to the challenges and opportunities of their communities and will know firsthand how best to create those solutions. So at Generation Unlimited, we've built a portfolio of programs and initiatives that make entrepreneurship a viable and dignified livelihood pathway. Imagine Ventures, for instance, a youth-led social entrepreneurship program that's been in 60 countries worldwide, equips young change makers to develop financially viable ventures aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. It's not just about giving young people a stage, it's about giving them the tools, the mentorship, and networks to thrive. I mean, some of the issues that Ernest had also identified can be a challenge for young people, as you also rightly said, Neha. So just last week, we're really happy to, or proud to say, we held an incubation week in China and hosted by Accenture, because I see Farai on our panel. Accenture's been a tremendous partner for us in many ways in our programs and strategy. And here, where finalists sharpen business plans and pitch to potential partners, a powerful illustration of this kind of innovation we're enabling is called P Vita. So this is actually co-founded by Nagla Mohammed, a youth-led green biotechnology enterprise, developing sustainable chemical production alternatives. And it shows how youth founders can pair deep scientific expertise with market opportunities to drive both environmental and also economic impact. It's really inspiring. Be Green Africa is another flagship initiative that links entrepreneurship to the green transition. It enables marginalized young people to earn a livelihood while directly contributing to climate solutions, whether through green value chains or small-scale circular economy businesses. And this is all described more in the report. At the same time, we also recognize that young people will start small and informal. And as some have said, micro-entrepreneurship or necessity entrepreneurship. And we are working with the community health worker entrepreneurship models. Many of these are young women. And we also know that young women tend to be twice as likely as young men not to be in education, training, or employment. And many of these young women we're helping them generate income while building essential services for their communities, from health to hygiene to data collection. So what do we need to be better at? Just to conclude, like that was kind of within that question. And I think with looking back at my experience, now it's been over 20 years in the sector, and just seeing that too often what I've seen is entrepreneurship support is fragmented, short trainings without follow through, not really seen as a sustainable, dignified livelihood pathway. We need to invest more, much more, as an international community in comprehensive ecosystems that provide access to capital, grants, seed funding, loans, long-term mentorship, and market access, while shaping policy environments that make it easier for youth-led startups to grow, really building that public-private youth partnership to make that happen. And we also need targeted approaches, especially for young women, as I mentioned before, and other underserved communities who face higher barriers to entry. So ultimately, supporting youth entrepreneurship is about creating self-reliant, job-creating agents of change. So our next challenge is ensuring every promising idea that we see has some sort of runway and support to scale. Thanks, Neha.
Yeah, thank you for that comprehensive response. Now we have a time constraint, but a lot of insight. Now we'll move to the call to action, and this is going to be a rapid fire. So I would like you all to share one statement for your call to action. Let's begin with Ernest. As a youth advocate, what's your call to action for today's conversation?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'd like to say that involving young people shouldn't be just something optional or a good to do thing. It should be a must do thing, or something that we should consider primarily, because sometimes I fail to understand how people can sit down and design solutions for the people whom they have not included in identifying solutions by themselves. So youth involvement should first of all be done, first of all, by considering young people themselves including them in decisions that they do, because whenever we can sit down and say we're designing solutions for young people, not putting them first, it's not going to solve anything. It is going to cause recurring problems every single moment. And we keep discussing on these every single moment. So I'd like to say that we should, first of all, consider young people, consulting them, listening to them, and first of all, considering what they think are the best solutions that fit their problems, rather than just going there and say we're solving problems for the people without consulting them.
Yeah, thank you. Coming to Rihanna. So, with regard to evidence-based to guide action, would you like to share a quick call to action response with us?
Thank you, Neha. Yes, I mean, one of the report's main calls to action is around the need for more and better evidence on youth economic empowerment and needing to understand what works for whom and in which context, and the importance of applying a local and intersectional lens to that. So knowing that a young person's background and location will really shape their perspectives and experiences. My call to action will be to echo what Ernest has just said, the need to engage in deep listening and involving young people in designing the monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning processes, and being involved in data collection, analysis, and the recommendations. Crucially, this should be done in a way that's beneficial to them so that they grow through the process, not just contribute to the process. And we'll share a link in the chat to an example from World YMCA where we involved youth champions in designing a global youth survey that we undertook, and how that was an empowering process for them, and how that then contributed to some rich insights that paved the way for some of our future work. And we would hope to do more of that, and as a sector come together in coalitions where we can continue to think about alignment, collaboration, and investment in a nutshell.
Thank you. Now coming to you, Farai, someone who's done multi-sectoral collaboration all throughout her work. What's your call to action today?
Thanks, Neha. My call to action is that there can't be any single partner that can solve the youth unemployment crisis that we have. It has to take coordinated efforts between young people, between government, between the private sector, between civil society and development partners. And we've seen successful models of where this exists. GenU is a great example as a public-private youth partnership where we're co-designing pathways. GenU is mobilizing investment and also aligning with what national priorities are across different countries. In South Africa, it's no secret that we've got one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world. And as a result, our government implemented a few years ago what's called the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, or as we call it for short, the PYEI. That for me is such a powerful example, once again, of how government, private sector, civil society, and young people can deliver opportunities at scale. One of the products that we've got as part of the PYEI is a platform called SA Youth. SA Youth is a free platform for young people to access jobs. There are 4.8 million young people on the platform. It is free for employers to post their opportunities. It is free for NGOs. And that's just such a great example of how you've got a free tool with a national dashboard. We can all track the results. We can all, as a country, track how many young people got jobs or employment and what that looks like. And I'm excited to see what comes out of more partnership. So if we stop working in silos, we can have collective impact. Thanks, Neha.
Yes, from silos to collective impact. And there I come to you, Uma. We need finance, finance, finance. What call to action do you have for new forms of financing that can be leveraged to support us, the youth?
Sure. So we know that the scale of the challenge is massive. So we know that traditional development financing is nowhere near close enough to close the gap. So we're going to have to mobilize capital from every corner, whether it's public, private, philanthropic, and design mechanisms that make investing in young people's skills and enterprises both viable and attractive. Just one point on the private sector, and I think Farai mentioned it earlier, how important the role of the private sector is, and actually ultimately employs 80% of the global workforce. So companies will want skilled, ready talent pipeline and stronger markets. So we really need to step up not only as employers, but also as co-investors in the system to prepare young people for livelihoods. In the report, it goes into much more detail on the range of financing options. For example, in blended finance, impact investment, outcome-based financing. So I won't go into so much detail. It's there in the report about the different mechanisms that are there. And we have a strong example of using such approaches with our collaboration with the Islamic Development Bank. And in fact, we're building a whole global framework for youth entrepreneurship and livelihoods financing, starting with an Egypt pilot. And they cover 57 member countries around the world. And some of the initiatives I mentioned before, youth-led innovations and Imagine Ventures, Be Green, we need this kind of financing to help scale such proven ventures, because in the field, this is what's really going to be important to make a big impact for youth. I think just to say at the end, when it comes to the call to action around financing, to make this work, we really need clear and measurable outcomes, data that shows which interventions have real economic value. As said already before by the panelists, we need cross-sector partnerships, bringing finance, education, technology actors together. And critically, as I think everyone agrees on this call, we need to co-design solutions with young people and for young people, ensuring that the financing products really reflect young people's realities, from collateral challenges to digital payment preferences and so forth. And finally, we'll need private sector transparency and commitment, with companies openly declaring their investments in learning to earning pathways. So we can shift really from small grant dependent pilots. We want to shift from that to an investable architecture for youth livelihoods at scale, which is one of the key recommendations of the report. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for keeping it concise. And now we will come to the Q&A segment. And we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions in the chat box. And Julia has been kind enough to pick a few which are very important to our discussion here. So the first question is coming to Tom, and they ask, how does the growing presence of AI impact young people securing jobs, as well as how mentorship programs are structured to help young people transition from learning to earning?
Thanks, Neha. I'll answer it. I did type an answer into the chat, but being able to speak verbally gives me a little bit more time to respond to it. I think it's a really important question. And the short answer is, to this point, we still don't really know. AI is such an emerging technology, and it's very different to a lot of technologies we've seen before. The growth in AI is really exponential and is happening very, very quickly. As humans, we're so often thinking kind of logical and progressive rather than exponential. And so I think we're going to see a lot of changes in this space based on the role that AI will play. What I will say is there's many diverse opinions about this currently. Some opinions are that we're going to see a huge decrease in jobs, and jobs will be cut through the increasing use of AI. But then there's another side of the world that thinks actually we're going to see a lot of increases in jobs, similar to other technological developments in the past, where many people thought a lot of jobs will be lost. Some jobs will go, but new jobs will be created. Interestingly, and I'll drop it into the chat in a minute, we did our last executive report, Time to Act, about that was focusing on how to support young people to succeed in an AI-powered world. What I will say is that even after that report, what we've identified is we need more and better insights about this. We need to be looking at the evolution of AI and its impact on the job market on a number of different fronts. We need to be looking at individual countries, and even within countries, individual geographic areas. What happens in Nairobi will be different to what happens in Kisumu out in the west of Kenya. We need to be thinking about different economic groups and how it will impact different economic groups. We need to be thinking about also different time horizons. So what will be the impact in 1 year versus 3 years versus 10 years? And so there's a lot of nuance to the question. I personally think that what we are likely to see is that AI will take over some of the jobs that have traditionally been entry points into job markets for young people. So taking minutes, typing up policy papers or policy insight papers, designing presentations, kind of basic functionalities. So what this means is that young people will need to adapt the skills that they develop to be able to find a unique niche within the marketplace. And from a GenU perspective, we're really doubling down on equipping young people with AI skills, foundational AI skills, to really support them to have their own unique value proposition and say, hey, we have mastered this new technology. We are AI natives. We know how to use it best. If you want to succeed and you want to harness this tech, then come and employ us. And we'll be equipping nearly 4 million young people by 2027 globally through our Passport to Earning initiative with entry-level AI skills. I could go on for a lot longer on that topic, Neha, but I'm going to stop now and give our other panelists time to answer some others. Back to you.
Yeah, and so would we love to hear you, but the time, yeah, it's a constraint here. Next question is from Jennifer King to Farai, and the question is, countless organizations and donors have invested for years and decades in youth employment initiatives, yet it seems we continue to discuss actions we've talked about before. So, what do we think are the main reasons why we can't make sufficient progress or scale up pilot initiatives so that we can shift systems and those systems can generate change going forward?
Thanks, Jennifer.
All the best.
Super. I think I think that question is a really, really important one. And I think there's so many layered answers that we could have. But I do think one of the major reasons is that there's a lot that's going on, but it's not coordinated. And I find that even within my own ecosystem, before the launch of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, every corporate had their own program that they were running. And so we then see that it's then a small group of young people that get an opportunity. It's not often scaled. Once the young people have completed the opportunity, they're either absorbed into the workforce or then have to navigate finding what their next steps look like. So I do think that if we have better coordination, that would really result in scalable programs because the research is there. There's an understanding of the need for demand-led skilling. There's an understanding of what jobs are needed, but how do we better coordinate? And I think one of the successful examples that I've seen of that has been in SA, we have got what was a public employment program, which we haven't really touched on in today's discussion, but public employment is a really viable form of employment as well. We merged that public employment to say, once a young person transitions from that public employment, what's their next step? Is it with the Youth Employment Service, where it's private sector funded jobs? Is it with Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator? What does that next step look like? And how do we then track the journey of these young people? So my hope is that better coordination will be important. We must get government, private sector, young people, NGOs into the room to co-create what solutions look like. And we've set as a country a really ambitious target that we want to curb youth unemployment by 10 to 20 percentage points in the next 10 years. So we've all got a major target, and I hope that we will definitely achieve it through coordination.
Yeah, it is a layered question, and I think until it goes on, it's a systemic change, and until it goes on, we'll have to keep asking these questions. So thank you for the question as well. Let's keep asking these questions in every space. Finally, we'll take our last question from the audience, which is from Jamie, and she asks to Rihanna, higher education is still seen as a tool for social mobility. How can we create value around technical and vocational education and entrepreneurship? For entrepreneurship, so those paths can also lead to social mobility plus recognition by the market that those are also important and needed.
Thank you, Neha. I didn't catch the question. Could you say that again?
Yes. So basically, what Jamie is asking is that higher education is still seen as a tool for social mobility. But now with the emerging and newer fields around technical, vocational education, entrepreneurship, how can those pathways also find that dignity and also social, a means to social mobility, basically the recognition that they deserve. So how can that shift happen?
Thank you. A great question. And, traditionally, higher education has been seen as the kind of silver bullet, but actually, in reality, in many of the countries and contexts in which we operate, that's too often not the case. Earlier, Ramila spoke to the importance of the youth entrepreneurship sector and the informal sector in particular. We have TVET. There are so many multiple pathways that young people can now use to enter into the world of work. And as the report highlights, these pathways are not linear, so it's not the traditional education into higher education and then into a job. There's now a weaving and in and out of different types of employment. You can be an entrepreneur for a short period of time and then go into employment and then go back to being an entrepreneur again. And it's a really a path that's a winding one. And I think what we need to do as actors all working in this sector is we need to recognize that this pathway is winding and diverse, and we need to ensure that we provide opportunities for young people to be skilled in various different ways, not necessarily through formal education, but also through non-formal education, through TVET, through other opportunities, harnessing AI, as Tom has spoken to earlier, other digital solutions. We need to be creative. We need to embrace all of these other opportunities that the current world is offering us, and I think encourage parents as well to move away from that mindset. I think the importance of not just working with young people, but the families that surround them, and that there are often particular cultural mindsets around the importance of higher education and the need for higher education as being a passport to future earning and prestige and status in society. And I think it's about also breaking down some of those misconceptions and working with families and communities to debust some of those myths. Thank you. A great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. There are many more questions, but I think to the audience, I would just like to say, keep those questions alive in you and let this conversation be a starter to stir those explorations, research. So yes, keep those questions alive. And yes, a big thank you. I mean, the hour just passed by. And a big thank you to all the panelists for being such I feel torchbearers into guiding us into different insights, experiences, and again, I would like to focus on the call to action that was given, which is so important. We need to hear to the young people. Deep listening is so important. Looking at the local intersectional lens for evidence, multisectoral partnerships from silos to the collective, and diversified capital for, with, and by young people. All of these insights, call to action, is very important, and let us take these conversations forward. And with that, I would again like to thank everyone who joined in this conversation, the panelists, the audience, and let's keep these discussions going offline as well via the community forum. So if you have questions we didn't get to or reflections that sparked by today's dialogue, so feel free to jump in there. We'll share a link in the chat shortly. You can join the community and keep the chat going on. And lastly, if you could just take a minute to fill in our short feedback form, your inputs would also really help in keep improving our future events, especially the Youth Foresight webinars. So with that, yes, the feedback form is already here. Please take a minute and fill it. And as you fill that, thank you so much for the feedback. And thank you so much once again for tuning in into the conversation.
Thanks, Neha. Thank you, everyone, for a great session. Really appreciate the
Thanks
thoughts
so
and
much.
see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much.